Welcome to Cupid's Corner, where love stories come alive. Whether you're a hopeless romantic or just looking for a touch of warmth in your day, you've come to the right place. Sit back, relax, and let the tales of romance sweep you off your feet.
Pen Pal Pact. Chapter 1. The Letters. Henry, now 78 years old, sat in his study, a warm, inviting space that had become his sanctuary over the years. The room was filled with a scent of old books and a soft glow of the afternoon sunlight streaming through the window. Around him were neatly organized stacks of letters, each one carefully preserved as if were a treasure. These letters, penned over a course of more than 6 decades, were more than just paper and ink. They were fragments of his heart, memories shared across the miles with the woman he had never met, Mildred. As Henry shuffled through the piles of yellow papers on his desk, each one a letter and a testament to his long-distance friendship with Mildred, he pondered the fact that they grew up on the opposite sides of the same town, going to different schools and never meeting in person. The walls of his cozy Philadelphia study were adorned with old photos of trains, but today his heart was more focused on the woman in Arizona who filled his letters with warmth and laughter. "Dear Mildred," he muttered to himself, smiling as he remembered her latest reply, "you're as bright as a freshly polished train engine." He chuckled to himself, the sound echoing warmly in the quiet room. He picked up a fresh sheet of paper, the familiar scratch of his pen already to dance across the surface. Meanwhile, across the country, Mildred sat in her quaint cottage, sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating her myriad of plants. She held Henry's latest letter, the words dancing in her mind as Henry described a selfie to her. A selfie is like you see me, I see you moment. I mean, honestly, how can a picture be an I see you moment? She laughed, her voice ringing out like a cheerful bell. "Oh, Henry, you're such a gem." She set the letter down and glanced at her reflection in the window. With a flip of her hair, she called out, "You think after all these years he had figured it out?" Back in Philly, Henry was deep in thought, pen hovering above the paper. What should I say next? Maybe, "Dear Mildred, I'm convinced that if you were here with your hairdressing skills, my hair would look fabulous." He grinned, imagining Mildred's laughter. "Nah, too corny. But she loves corny," he muttered, shaking his head. He began again, the ink flowing as he crafted another letter, filled with anecdotes about his days and his plans to visit the local diner. "I should invite her to come in the city. Or maybe I'll visit her in Arizona." He chuckled at the thought of packing for the trip. Mildred, now imagining Henry in a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses as she read his latest letter, couldn't help but giggle. "I can see it now," she said to her cat, Mr. Whiskers, who lounged lazily in the sun. Henry in a Hawaiian shirt, looking like he was about to hit the beach instead of a diner. "What do you think, Mr. Whiskers?" Mr. Whiskers clearly unimpressed. I know. You prefer tuna to fashion advice," Mildred said, petting him lovingly. "I do wish I could see him in person." Chapter 2. The Discovery. The sun poured through the windows of Mildred's cottage, illuminating the dusty attic where she and her granddaughter Lily were busy sorting through years of memorabilia. Piles of boxes and trinkets surrounded them, but it was a weathered box tucked away in a corner that caught Lily's eye. "Grandma, what's this? A treasure map?" Lily teased, her voice bubbling with excitement as she pried the lid off the box. The faint scent of paper wafted into the air, and she peered inside. "Woohoo! Look at all these letters!" Mildred's heart skipped a beat as she caught a glimpse of the familiar envelopes. "Oh dear, those are old letters from a friend," Mildred replied, trying to sound nonchalant, while her cheeks flushed with warmth. "Just old letters? Who is this Henry person? The letters look like a whole love story." Lily grinned, pulling out a stack. Mildred's eyes widened in surprise. "You shouldn't be snooping through my things." Lily held up the letter, her eyebrows raised in mock disbelief. "This is gold, Grandma. Have you ever thought about meeting him?" Mildred's fingers brushing over the letters as memories flooded back. "Well, yes, but it's complicated." "Complicated? How?" she said, flipping through the letters. "Oh, I don't know, Lily. Just complicated." Mildred, biting her lip. "What if he doesn't recognize me? I mean, we've only seen pictures." "Grandma, he's old, not blind," she exclaimed, rolling her eyes. "And you are still fabulous. Just look at you." She gestured at Mildred's carefully styled hair and vibrant floral blouse. "You can't let a little anxiety stop you from meeting a guy who thinks you're as bright as a freshly polished train engine? Mildred laughed softly at the thought. I suppose he does have a way with words. Exactly, and he must be so sweet if he writes you like this. Plus, you two have been friends for ages. Lily's enthusiasm was infectious. You can't let this chance slip away. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Mildred considered this, her heart racing at the thought. I could trip and fall flat on my face, or say something ridiculous, or do something that embarrasses myself. Grandma, stop being silly. Just be yourself, Lily urged, leaning closer. You've got this. You can make this happen. I know you can. With a deep breath, Lily looked out of the attic window, where the sun dripped low in the sky, painting the world in shades of gold. You're right. I should at least try to meet him. Yes, Lily squealed, pumping her fist in the air. Let's do this, and remember, Grandma, you're as charming as a fine wine. Lily teased, nudging her. So when are you going to tell him? Mildred's resolve strengthening. I'll write him right now, and I'll say, Dear Henry, how about we finally meet in person? Perfect, Lily added, her fingers dancing over the old letters. Mildred felt a surge of excitement. All right, let's do this, her heart fluttering at the thought of finally meeting Henry. To new adventures, Lily echoed, her eyes twinkling with delight as they both descended the stairs of the attic, Mildred imagining a future that awaited them. Chapter 3. The Invitation. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow in the modest Philadelphia apartment. The walls were lined with memorabilia from his years as a railroad conductor. He sat at a small cluttered desk, the familiar weight of the pen in his hand. His fingers trembled slightly as he unfolded the letter from Mildred, the one that had sent his heart racing. Dear Henry, it began, and as he read her words, a smile spread across his face. How about we finally meet in person? Ha, he exclaimed, startling his cat Whistle, who was napping in a sunbeam. Can you believe it, Whistle? She actually wants to meet. The cat blinked lazily. Henry's heart thudded like train wheels. He loved Mildred from afar for decades. Their exchanges filled with laughter and warmth, but the thought of seeing her in person made his stomach flitter like nervous butterflies. What if she doesn't like him? What if he tripped over his own tongue? He continued to read the letter. P.S. I'll be the one with the nervous smile. He chuckled, picturing himself trying to look suave in her presence. All right, he muttered to himself. Time to write back. He turned to a fresh sheet of paper and began his pen pal response. Dear Mildred, he wrote, pausing to imagine her reading his words. Sounds like a splendid idea. How about we rendezvous in our old hometown? He glanced out the window, watching a group of children playing tag on the sidewalk. Just like the good old days, he muttered, nostalgia washing over him. Maybe we can grab a slice of that awful pizza from Tony's, he added with a chuckle. I'll be the one with the twitchy smile, but I promise to bring the best jokes. He felt a rush of warmth at the thought of sharing laughter with Mildred, an emotion he hadn't experienced in years. As he sighed with a flourish, a nervous excitement bubbled within him. Let's do this, he whispered, sealing the envelope. A quick trip to the mailbox on the corner. Henry felt a surge of determination. No backing out now, he told Whistle, who had decided to follow him. Meanwhile, across the country in Arizona, Mildred paced back and forth, her heart racing with anticipation. Lily, she called, her voice echoing through the sunlit space. Henry's letter is here. I hope you didn't think I was too forward. Lily, sticking her head out of the kitchen, a smudge of flour on her cheek from baking cookies. Grandma, you're fabulous. Besides, he's been waiting for this forever, she replied, wiping her hands on a towel. Do you really think so? Mildred asked, biting her lip. Absolutely. Lily grinned, her eyes sparkling. Just think about it. The two of you have been writing each other like lovebirds for years. It's about time you meet. Opening the letter, Mildred shouted, Yes, he said yes. Chapter 4. The Meeting. The day of the meeting arrived with a crispness in the air that hinted at autumn's approach. Henry stood outside the old train station, his heart racing like a locomotive ready to leave the station. He adjusted his glasses, peering around nervously. What if she thinks I'm a total dork, he muttered to himself. I wonder if I should have worn something fancier. The clock struck the hour, the door swung open, and there she was, Mildred. The sunlight danced around her, making her look like some sort of angelic figure. Henry's breath hitched in his throat. Wow, whispered, barely audible. Mildred spotted him, eyes widening in recognition. Henry, she exclaimed, her voice bright and warm. You look just like your picture. And you look like a million puns waiting to happen, Henry shot back, nerves picking up speed as laughter bubbled between them. Good, because I've got a whole suitcase full of puns ready for you, Mildred replied with a grin, kitten heels tapping lightly against the floor of the train station as she approached him. My social skills are a train wreck, Henry said, chuckling at his own awkwardness while rubbing his back of his neck, a habit he hadn't quite shaken off since childhood. So where do we go first? Mildred asked, looking around. Let's head towards the park, Henry suggested. The connection they shared the letters was undeniably strong, but now, meeting and walking together, it felt even more profound. Chapter 5, The Journey. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the park as Henry and Mildred continued to walk side by side along the winding paths, their footsteps crunching softly on the fallen leaves. The air was filled with the sweet scent of chrysanthemums, mixing with the earthy aroma of the oak trees that stood proudly around them. Sparrows and robins chirped sweetly from the branches above, providing a serene soundtrack to their long-awaited reunion. As they strolled, Henry pointed towards some worn-out benches nestled under a large willow tree. Do you remember when you described the spot to me? You said it was your favorite place to read and watch the world go by. Mildred's eyes sparkled with recognition as she looked at the familiar scene. Yes, I spent countless afternoons here with a good book and a thermos of tea. I always imagine you sitting beside me, discussing stories and debating the characters. Henry chuckled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Well, it seems your imagination has finally become reality. Care to sit and make up for some lost time? They settled into the bench, the wood warm beneath them from the day's sunshine. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, simply enjoying each other's presence and the peacefulness of the park. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves above, and Mildred closed her eyes, seeing the moment she had envisioned so many times before. This is even better than I imagined, she said softly, turning to look at Henry. Thank you for suggesting we meet here. Mildred leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Blushing slightly, Henry grabbed her hand. They rose and continued their journey through the park, eventually making their way towards the old library, the place where the pen pal program had begun, and a frequent topic in their letters. The building stood tall at the end of the tree-lined avenue, stone facade and the tall arch windows showing a timeless elegance. As they walked through the grand entrance, the familiar scent of aged paper and polished wood enveloped them. Rows on rows of books stretched out before them, each one gateways to different worlds and ventures they had often explored together through their correspondence. Mildred ran her fingers along the spines of the book, a nostalgic smile playing on her lips. Do you remember when we decided to read Pride and Prejudice at the same time and discuss it through our letters? We must have written a dozen pages debating Mr. Darcy's character. He laughed, his eyes twinkling with the memory. How could I forget? You defended him so passionately, while I insisted he was too proud for his own good. I believe you eventually won that argument. Only because you let me, Mildred replied with a playful grin. They spent some time browsing the shelves, sharing memories of the books they had read and loved, and picking out a few new titles to explore together. The librarian, noticing them in their animated discussion, smiled knowingly as the pair seemed to embody the very essence of literary romance. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the streets, Henry and Mildred made their way back to the riverbank. The water glistened under the fading light, flowing gently past the weeping willows lined the shore. The scene was tranquil, almost poetic, mirroring the gentle ebb and flow of their enduring relationship. As they walked along the river's edge, the sound of flowing water mingled with their laughter and conversation. Mildred suddenly stopped and pointed to a spot near the river. Isn't that where you told me you fell into the river trying to impress that girl when you were 17? Henry's cheeks flushed brightly, and he nodded, a sheepish smile forming. Yes, I thought performing a daring leap across those rocks would win her heart. Instead, I ended up soaked in and embarrassed. Mildred giggled, her laughter light and infectious. Well, for what it's worth, I find the whole story quite impressive. Henry looked into her eyes, the setting sun casting a warm glow around them. Summoning a touch of his youthful charm he once had, he replied with a wink, and now I'm trying not to fall for you. Mildred's smile softened, and she squeezed his arm gently. Perhaps this time, falling wouldn't be so bad. They continued their stroll, their conversation flowing as effortlessly as the river beside them. With each shared memory and newfound experience, their bond grew stronger, weaving together the threads of their past and the reality of their present. Chapter 6. The realization. As the sun dipped even lower in the sky, casting a warm golden hue on the river, Henry and Mildred found themselves perched on another weathered bench. The sounds of the city faded into a gentle hum, replaced by a soft tapping of the water against the shore. Mildred leaned back, her arms resting comfortably on the back of the bench. "You know, I could get used to this view," she said, her eyes sparkling as she watched the reflection of the sunset dance on the surface of the river. "It's like the universe decided to throw a party just for us." Henry chuckled, glancing sideways at her. "And we're the only two guests who brought their own punchline." He cleared his throat dramatically. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the great Mildred and her trusty conductor." "Boo!" Mildred laughed, playfully shoving him with her shoulder. "You need to work on your comedic timing, old man." "Old man? I preferred seasoned, thank you very much." Faking offense with a hand over his heart. "I have the wisdom of years and the jokes to prove it." "Wisdom? Yes," Mildred said, her eyes dancing. "But those jokes, I think they need a bit more seasoning." "Touché," Henry replied, laughing heartily. "So what's our next adventure? Skydiving?" He raised an eyebrow, his voice dipping into mock seriousness. "Only if you promise to hold my hand the whole way down," Mildred retorted, her laughter echoing. "But just so you know, I might scream like a banshee the entire time," he warned, his eyes wide with mock terror. Laughing, Mildred suggested, "Why don't we go and get some pizza instead?" "Great idea," Henry said, nudging her playfully. "But let's sit here a few more minutes to watch the sunset." As the sun began to shrink beneath the horizon, casting a pink and orange glow across the sky, the world around them started to fade into the background as they looked deeper into each other's eyes. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. The combination of the decades of shared thought and emotions had distilled into a singular moment. Mildred's eyes, a soft shade of brown that had seen so much life, were filled with such a tender light. As she gazed at Henry, she could see the depth of his feelings in the way he looked at her. There was a softness in his gaze, a warmth that had grown over the years, every letter, every shared story. It was as if the connection they had nurtured for so long had finally come into full bloom, right there in this moment. Henry, too, found himself lost in her eyes. They held a certain sparkle, a mixture of joy and anticipation that mirrored his own emotions. He had imagined this moment so many times, yet now that it was happening, it felt more profound. Every line on her face, every expression spoke of a life well lived. And yet, he felt as though there were two young souls discovering something new and beautiful together. Their breathing slowed, synced to the rhythm of their shared heartbeat. Time seemed to stretch out as they remained there, gazing at each other, saying everything without uttering a single word. A magnetic force drawing him closer to her, and he could see in her eyes that she felt it too. Gently, he began to lean in. The world around them disappeared entirely, leaving only the two of them in a cocoon of quiet anticipation. As faces joined, they each memorized details of the other's features, the curve of the smile, the light in their eyes, relishing in every second before their lips would meet. Then, in one soft, breathless moment, their lips touched. The kiss was tender and slow, a delicate connection that spoke of everything they had been to each other and everything that they could be. It was as if all the emotions they had shared over the years, the longing, the joy, and the quiet understanding were all poured into a single perfect kiss. Henry felt his heart swell as he kissed her, his hand gently cupping her cheek. He could feel her warmth, the softness of her skin under his touch, and the gentle pressure of her lips against his. Mildred's hand came up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm, a rhythm that seemed to echo her own. The kiss lingered, a moment suspended in time. Then they finally slowly pulled away. Their eyes remained locked, searching each other's faces for any sign of doubt. But all they found was a shared understanding, a quality that certainly had its own right. With their foreheads still touching and their breaths mingling in the cold evening air, the world around them seemed to fade back into focus. But now it felt different, brighter, warmer, as if the kiss had unlocked something they hadn't realized they were missing. They exchanged a look that held everything they had ever written to each other and more, a silent promising that the years of longing had not been in vain. With a soft smile, Henry whispered, "This is just the beginning," and Mildred nodded, her heart full as she took his hand in hers. Together they rose from the bench, not as two souls separated by distance and time, but as one, ready to walk into whatever the future held, no longer alone, but together, finally side by side. The end.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to click on the bell for more heartfelt tales. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Let's spread the love, because everyone deserves a bit of romance in their life.